Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is the Conversations with Corrections podcast. It's a monthly podcast for the Utah Department of Corrections staff to keep you updated on department news, as well as introducing you to inspiring peers and coworkers. I'm Jared Garcia, the Executive Director of the Utah Department of Corrections, and today on the podcast we're lucky to be joined by Colonel Mike Rapich. He's the Deputy Commissioner with the Utah Department of Public Safety. As many of you know, UDC and the Department of Public Safety do work closely together, as both of us are state agencies, and we play a significant role in keeping our communities safe. We're always looking for ways to strengthen that partnership and support each other's mission. I want to talk a little bit about Colonel Mike Rapich's career. Colonel Rapich has served with the Utah Department of Public Safety for more than 30 years. He currently oversees the Utah Highway Patrol, the Division of Emergency Management, and the Public Safety Communications Bureau. As a Utah State Trooper, Colonel Rapich progressed through the ranks of the Utah Highway Patrol and had the opportunity to be stationed all over the state of Utah. He served as the Bureau Commander of the State Bureau of Investigations, as the Deputy Commissioner for the Homeland Security Task Force during the 2002 Winter Olympics. The Highway Patrol is absolutely in his blood. He comes from a family line of patrolmen. His father served for 32 years in the Utah Highway Patrol, and Colonel Rapich will actually be retiring on October 30th of this year. I'm very excited to have him with us today, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's incredible to be here.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. In addition, I don't think I did your career justice. You've just had such an amazing career, and I certainly can't capture all of it in just a short introduction. But in addition to that illustrious career in law enforcement, we've known each other for a very, very long time. You were one of the very first leaders that I had the opportunity to encounter in my time with the Utah Highway Patrol, and I've always considered you to be a mentor and an outstanding example of leadership. What role has mentorship played for you throughout your career?
Especially in public service, but very much law enforcement or public safety, I think mentorship is one of the most key elements we have. We ask people in public safety, whether it's in corrections or whether it's in the Highway Patrol, the Department of Public Safety, law enforcement, EMS. These are people that are out doing really, really hard things, really difficult situations, interacting with people when emotions are high, and making decisions under high stress environments that have a lot of significance and impact to them. And we send them to the academy, we train them, we give them resources, we give them tools, but then we ask them to go out and be effective and do things the right way and do it perfectly every single time. And having those people around us who have done a lot of these things, who have a knowledge base and an experience base behind them, to kind of help people through that, especially early in our careers. Our mentors they helped us build confidence. They help us understand our jobs. They help us understand, what we needed to do and how to have conversations and how to make decisions and know that we can be successful and find good outcomes, and kind of, walk you through those early stages of your career when you're trying to develop the knowledge base, that confidence, that ability to be able to go into really hard situations and find good outcomes. And then, as we progress into our careers, we move into new positions and new responsibilities and new technical skills, and then into leadership, where you actually get to get in a position where you oversee other people and you're doing the same thing. And I distinctly remember early in my career watching as a young sergeant, even as a young lieutenant, captains and majors and the colonels and the commissioners, and thinking about the incredible decisions they're a part of, and how they have such an incredible knowledge. They seem to be just superhuman in what they do. And then you get into these positions and realize they were just kind of taking on every single day, one day at a time. But you learn that you can develop skills within the budget, within personnel issues, within strategic planning, and understand where the department's going. And so, I don't know, the mentors are the ones that helped us define our careers. They're the ones that helped us look to something bigger and more incredible. They're the ones that helped us believe that we could accomplish great things in a really, really challenging environment that we all love to be a part of. They support us, they reinforce us, they give us the confidence we need to be able to do really hard things. And they inspire us, they want us to reach out to be able to do something greater. And I think that mentorship goes both ways. You talked about our interactions. I think I was a lieutenant section 4 when you were a young trooper, and came in with all the excitement and just a raw ability and just a drive to be able to do this job incredibly well. and that had inspiring effect to those around you, had an inspiring effect on me as your supervisor to want to make sure that I'm living up to those expectations as well. So I think another important part of mentorship is it goes two ways. It's how do we involve ourselves in a group of people that are all engaged in something bigger than what we're doing, and want to be able to do that better and look for opportunities to improve it, and be part of creating something more than what we have now.
Yeah. You don't become an outstanding leader like yourself without having some solid mentors in your life. Can you describe maybe one or two of your mentors and what they taught you along the way?
Yeah, my greatest mentor is obviously my father. He was a second-generation trooper, so I grew up watching him do these incredible things that state troopers do and law enforcement officers do. And so from a very early age, just fascinated by that and wanted to hear about every single part of it and talk about what he was involved with and why he was so excited about it and why it was so important. And then as I started growing up as a young trooper, kind of here's the things you need to focus on if you really want to be successful. Put a lot of effort on DUI enforcement. DUI enforcement's important, and if you can do that, you can do anything. I remember him telling me that. And then getting into a leadership position, he told me, he said there's only a couple things you really need to be able to do well to be a great leader, and then you can apply it any philosophy you want. He says you need to be able to set an example for everybody else, lead by example, and put your people ahead of yourself. He said if you can accomplish those two things, everything else is pretty much just theory and personal practice. And then I remember distinctly, becoming a supervisor. My first role as a supervisor, my lieutenant was Terry McKinnon, who ended up being a major in the organization, retiring. And he was the first one to kind of really challenge me to look at things differently and to realize things from a supervisory perspective, to kind of take a bigger perspective of what the department's trying to accomplish and what my role was in that, and kind of just helping me understand that there was a whole lot more to be in consideration and a bigger view to have on things than just simply what my particular task that day was and what my particular assignment was. At the time, I was the recruit sergeant, and understanding how, developing people, young troopers and getting them started right and making them understand the values of the highway patrol was setting them up for success later in life. And so I leaned on him a lot. He's the first one that told me the phrase of, worry about the things you can control and minimize the things that you can't. I've probably reminded myself of that 1,000 times over the course of the careers. Put all your effort into what you've been given responsibility for. Don't get too caught up in the things that you're not responsible for and you can't control, and don't let that dictate, the way you engage your job. So, Colonel Fuhrer, Commissioner Anderson, Colonels. I guess in law enforcement in general, and very much in the Department of Public Safety and Utah Highway Patrol and State Bureau of Investigations, we have the benefit that leadership is a necessity, and so we put a lot of emphasis on it, and we get the opportunity to be around incredible leaders all the time that are doing hard things in hard situations, but when done correctly, they're very much appreciated by the people that put us in those positions. And so I think it's a fascinating career in the fact that you're surrounded by amazing people that do incredible things and are incredible leaders that I think we're all, if we're really putting our heart into it, are learning from every single day.
Yeah. No, that's great. At the Utah Department of Corrections, we're really trying to develop leaders at all levels. It's really a concept that I learned at the Utah Department of Public Safety. And you've led for 30 years, which means you've led different generations of people who have different cultural beliefs and standards. What advice could you give to our leaders in our organization on how to be approachable? You touched on that a little bit earlier, but it can be scary to approach a lieutenant or a captain or an organization, a warden or deputy warden or a chief. How have you been able to maintain that kind of persona where you are approachable and where you try to connect with people from different generations throughout your years?
Sure. I think you got to start by being in the same environments and go out and seek for opportunities to be there when they're doing the hard things that they're charged of, when they're taking care of the things they're responsible for, and understand what they're having and have conversations where they're working, where they're interacting, understanding the challenges they're having, making time. Everybody talks about an open door policy, but do we really have that? Every single one of it, especially as you move into different responsibilities and different positions, you have meetings and you have deadlines and you have deadlines and you have email that you need to take care of, these crazy things that can amazingly occupy your entire day. Do you really look for the opportunity when someone comes by your office or just pokes their head in to say hi as an opportunity to say, okay, I want to hear what's going on with that person and to hear what that position, what they're doing with, whatever they're responsible for. there's I learned this probably as a lieutenant in Section 4, because you had a lot of people and a lot of things going on all the time. Value the fact that people are willing to tell you what they're thinking, even if you completely disagree with it, and even if they completely are completely wrong in what their thought process is, and they may be, or maybe they're looking at things in a way you haven't. Value the fact that they're willing to come and trust you enough to share with you what they're actually thinking. You can't beg that from them. You can't buy it from them. You can't demand it. They're either willing to share that with you or they're not. And if you value the fact that at least they're willing to tell you, because sometimes you may get an opportunity to realize, holy cow, they're looking at something I haven't even looked at, and there's a different perspective that is valuable to look at and be considered before we make a decision or how we're doing things. Or they may be operating from entirely bad information, and it's an opportunity to be able to actually correct that and get to, and influence how their decision making is going and how they're going forward as well. And so, the opportunity to actually interact with people and realize that's the most important thing. And I've talked a lot that a day away from the office, out just finding opportunities to have conversations, even though it may feel like you're ignoring a whole lot of other things, is an incredibly valuable time, and it's a day well spent if you can actually make yourself. And we kind of think of that like it should naturally happen, but it's actually a very deliberate process. You have to actually set time and prioritize and put other things aside to make time to actually be able to go out and talk with people and understand what they're doing. And it's really easy to let that get away from you.
Yeah. No, that is wonderful advice. We're constantly preaching the importance of starting from a place of yes and finding solutions for people. And to your point, it requires us to listen first and take in the ideas that people have, and for us to actually think from a different perspective at times as well. So thank you for that. What drove your career in public service? What do you think? What was a factor or many factors that really drove you in this direction?
I share this a lot, especially when I'm sure you've heard me share this before. I deal with young troopers a lot when they're graduating the academy and looking at this career. I started my career in public service with the U.S. Coast Guard, and I loved that. It was a lot of fun. It was important. It was challenging. It was exciting. And you were doing things like that with amazing people that were just great to be around, that were inspiring to be around, that were fun and exciting, and they were all doing something that was really important, and we were doing it together as a team. I loved every bit about it. The only reason I left that is because I wanted to be a state trooper so badly. And so early in the career, I was excited about DUI arrests and excited about criminal interdiction, excited about stolen vehicles, and we had Ford Mustangs and doing speed enforcement, all the exciting things that every single day are just incredibly exciting. They're still exciting. And then 30 years later, you're not doing those same things anymore. You're part of an organization that's accomplished that, but you're doing different things now. But you're still doing the same things and still a part of an incredibly important mission, but most importantly with amazing people who are all completely invested and excited and doing really important work. And the best people we could possibly have, especially in Utah, across the country. But I think in Utah, as our law enforcement culture, we demand the very best. Our stakeholders demand the very best. It's interesting how these challenges become more significant in society, and even maybe some of the values of society seem to degrade a little bit. The expectation of law enforcement officers seems to increase proportionally. The people that trust us to do the things we do expect the very best of us. And so it's to get back to the point of your question, the exciting part about this and what drove me to that is just the people that I seen and, the incredible individuals they were, the kinds of things they were involved with, the mission, the importance of it. And then as you got involved in it, realizing that you're doing that with people that are thinking the same thing, that just want to be a part of something really and truly incredibly great and incredibly important. And they're the very best people they can. I'm getting ready to end my career. I'm going to, this week will be the final week in the Utah Highway Patrol, and to think of not being surrounded every single day by amazing people doing really important work, I don't know what that looks like. I'll have to tell you in a little while. And you'll never ever fill that gap. Hopefully you find something fun as well, but there'll never ever be anything like that again.
Yeah, that's very, very true. But I'm sure you'll find something to fill your time with, whether it's fishing or hunting or hiking. And by the way, I do have a lot of Mike Rapich stories that I actually still, for me to give leadership examples, whether it's the day of a promotion when it's not about
Yeah.
that day it's about the celebration of getting promoted, but after that it's about taking care of your people, or the story of your one of your mentors who was always there on the Coast Guard every
Yes.
time you got back. And
Senior Chief Billman, yes.
and I have many stories I'd love to share during this podcast, but we'll run out of time if I share all my Mike Rapich stories. You were always very, very inspirational to me. How much did having a family legacy inspire you as opposed to other internal or personal motivations?
It was obviously from an early age, like a lot of young men are, really close to my father. I'm fascinated by everything he did, but the chance of a couple of things with that. He would come home and he would talk about his career a lot. It was really fascinating to see how excited he was about what he was doing every day and how much he liked to share. Whether it was a really horrible crash and what he did to go in there and kind of restore order and make people safe again and make sure they were taken care of, or get them through a really, really, really horrible day of their life, or talk about a really significant arrest he'd made and the impact that had on society and keeping us, and the bigger effort to kind of keep the world safe a little bit better. I was always fascinated by how proud my mother was of what he did and how she talked about that, how she put emphasis on how important his job was. And so that brought a lot to it as well. I got to know people that he was involved with and the people that he worked with a lot, and realized that they were amazing people that I liked to be around and I liked to hear about, and seemed to have a way of communicating excitement and enthusiasm about what they were doing. And so I think that's one of the kind of the different parts of this, the new generation of law enforcement officers that we're seeing is sometimes it seems like we need to find opportunities to let them become aware of just how amazing this job is and how amazing public service is, and especially public safety and everything involved in that. And the opportunities to really be around incredible people, but incredible leaders, and the opportunities to actually develop leadership skills. You said as well as you yourself that you got a career that is incredibly fulfilling, but it's incredibly fulfilling because we do it really well, and it's about the service we provide. It's about interacting with the other people we're involved with. It's about taking on really important responsibilities. It always fascinated me that we put great people into leadership positions that they've never been involved with before. When you became a lieutenant or when you became a captain, no one gave you a manual on how that was what you needed to do. And here's the 25 or 100 things you need to make sure you're doing. You were incredibly good an individual. You were a great leader, and we put you in a position to be responsible for a lot. And you took care of it, and you figured out what it did to take care of that. We develop great people who believe in what they have. We give them good resources. We surround them with great people and great examples. We can give them responsibility for anything, and they will figure out how to take care of it and make it better and do it even better.
Oh, that's awesome. One of the principles we talk about a lot here is how attitude can be infectious. And one thing that just resonated with me while you were speaking is how many times you use the word opportunity. And it makes me feel guilty about the next question, but it is important for us to view things as opportunities as opposed to an impediment or whatever other adjective we want to use. And so I just really want to emphasize that to our staff, the importance of viewing every day as an opportunity, and emphasize that to others. But with that being said, what are some of the most difficult challenges that you faced over your 30 years, specifically while serving as a leader?
I don't know. Hopefully that's difficult because we didn't focus on the challenges. We focused on how they became opportunities. But we were asked to do some really, really difficult things. You and I actually did a lot of these things together when we were asked as an organization to go into downtown Salt Lake, into Rio Grande. I can remember I was attending graduate school in the 3 years prior, the immediate 3 years prior to that in 2017 when we were asked for that. And I remember driving down 3rd West and through that area late at night after graduate school and going home and kind of looking at, that challenge that was there. And it was very pervasive. You could see it everywhere. And remember distinctly thinking, man, I'm glad that's not my problem to solve. And in 2017 as an organization, we were asked to go down and help be a very big part of that solution. And you were probably ultimately more involved in that than I was, but not something that we looked at that and got saying, hey, that we want this. We had stakeholders, significant stakeholders that came in and said, we're going to solve this problem, and we want the Department of Public Safety, we want state troopers to help us solve this problem. And so we dug in and we gathered up, the best of the best we had in the organization, the best leaders, the best troopers, the best investigators, and we put a team together and said, okay, we don't know what this is going to look like. We're going to give you the tools you need. We're going to give you the resources you need, and we will do whatever it is to make sure you can do this and do it safely. And I think we backed that up, and we went in and over a 2 or 3 year period of time made a significant impact on something that when we first asked to do that, we really didn't know what was that going to look like. In 2020, when we were right in the middle of COVID and the whole nation's trying to figure out where they were with that, the police reforms and those times up at the Capitol where we were seeing things that we had never seen in the state of Utah before. We were seeing public disruption and anti-law enforcement sentiments that I didn't think we would ever see in the state, but we were seeing them then. All of a sudden, it was becoming a very real challenge, and we had a few problems to solve on that one. One, we needed to keep our state capital safe. We needed to keep our capital city safe. We needed to be able to work with law enforcement agencies in ways we hadn't before, and figure out a lot of those things as well. But also, we had to dig in and really kind of ask ourselves, okay, why is there this much frustration? Why are there people that are feeling they're being so incorrectly served by law enforcement, that don't feel like they can trust, or they're this angry at law enforcement? We were all so proud of the service we provide, and very proud of the fact that we do it well. And all of a sudden, we were being faced with something that was saying something different. And you were there, and we were there. We had a lot of meetings. We had a lot of conversations with probably groups and individuals we'd never had talked to before, trying to understand that. And as an organization, we kind of shifted through. Okay, some of this stuff is some things we need to improve on. Some of this stuff is a little bit confusing, and maybe it's not what it appears to be. And we worked through legislation, we worked through training for our officers, and we worked through, how do we handle things like this and do it effectively and support our community and still make people stay safe. And I think we got through a very long process into a really good position on that. And across the nation, but very much here in the state of Utah, I think law enforcement is probably, I don't know if you could call that the refiner's fire, but I think there's a better perception than there ever has been. There's a greater level of appreciation. There's a greater expectation of professionalism, and our organization, our people as a whole, have probably become even greater because of it. Okay. Two really big examples. There's a lot of daily examples, but sometimes it's just how many emails are coming in.
Yeah, those were definitely, Operation Rio Grande specifically was a very challenging operation. And I'm reminded all the time by our AP&P agents that they participated in that as well. But it's a great example of how agencies come together to find solutions. We have different jobs on a day-to-day basis, but we in Utah are really great at coming together and finding meaningful solutions together. So Thank you for those examples.
Very collaborative. That's a good way to put it. There was a lot of resources came together, and we had to learn to work, and I think we have learned to work together as agencies and different jurisdictions better than we ever had before. And I think we're doing a lot of things better because we've learned that than we did maybe 10 years ago.
Absolutely. Can you just describe to us or tell us about some of your proudest moments or accomplishments over your past 30 plus years?
I would probably say some of the ones that you would say that your proudest moments and the biggest accomplishments where we feel like we've really made a difference. Some of the ones we've already described. You talk about Operation Rio Grande. We talk about the 2020 and everything that in 2020 evolved and how we got through that, and took some external challenges and we took some internal challenges. Recruitment and retention became a big issue. Compensation became a big issue. We were working through legislative issues that we needed to stay ahead of and keep them where they needed to be. And we came out on the other side of that in a really good place as an organization, as a profession. But the thing about it was there was no one person that was responsible for that. You got to be a part of something collaboratively that made a significant difference. You look back on some of the most challenging incidents that we've been involved with, where maybe even some really horrible things have happened, but then watch how, as an organization, as an agency, as a profession, we come together and get through those kinds of things. And even though there may be tragedy involved in that, on the other side of that, seeing how people respond and how people come out to be able to be part of the solution and accomplish what needs to be done. There's thousands of examples to use on that on a daily basis and a yearly basis. So I think to just say one individual accomplishment, I don't think there is one. I think that there's 1,000 examples of how I got to be a part of something really incredible that some amazing people all contributed to, and we had a really great outcome. Those might be a legislative issue where we really moved the needle on something really important. It might be an organizational issue where we, accomplish or, develop something that we've been working towards really great, a new initiative, a new organization, a new mission. Or it could be a significant big event that we were involved with, this 2002 Olympics that the whole world was involved with, was a really significant one, or some of the things we've been involved with. I don't know that I've really had an individual accomplishment that I could say, yeah, I did this, I accomplished this, but I've had an opportunity to be involved of some pretty amazing ones and work with incredible people where really great things were done, and at least associate myself to something really amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just a product of having so many amazing accomplishments. It's hard for you to pick one, but I have to give you some credit because I just think of all the leaders in law enforcement in this state and even other states that you've impacted, and the difference that you made by serving as a mentor and a really excellent example of how a leader should respond every single day. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you for that. Personally, how often have you found that your biggest achievements, they come out of some sort of challenge or crisis?
Probably all of them. I don't know. You look at, I guess you're trying to say things that you think that you did personally to try to help you prepare yourself to be successful. Getting a graduate degree. That was a really, really long process. You look at that, and anybody looks at it thinks, oh, I don't want to go through that. I remember another one of my great mentors, Major Mike Keene, that I got to work with really closely for about 5 years. When I was contemplating whether to do this or not, and it's going to cost a lot of money, it's going to take a lot of time. It's I don't. And he looked at me and said, "Look," he said, "at the end of 3 years, you're either going to you can look at 3 years from now, you'll either have a graduate degree or you won't, depending on whether you start right now." And he was right. It's kind of like, okay, how often do you kind of invest yourself in something hard? One example I use with new troopers when they come on is I don't think there's any other career that I've ever been involved with or I'm ever aware of where the more you put into this, the more you're going to get out of it, exponentially more. The more work you're willing to put into it, the more effort you're trying to do, the more willingness you're able to get out of your comfort zone and learn new things, and be the dumbest person in the room and have to figure out how to get better and understand things that you haven't had to before are going to be the opportunities to be able to be successful. Personal successes have been associated to enforcement. They've been associated to opportunities to be in leadership positions, and I never ever expected to be able to do that. I started this career as a state trooper wanting nothing more than to be qualified and competent to be a great state trooper. And I thought if I could only do that, that's all I ever want. And 33 years later, you get the opportunity to be in a position where you lead the organization. And it's just opportunities that come up, working really, really hard, being willing to get into something maybe you hadn't expected before. But I think, being willing to be involved in hard things. And the great thing about law enforcement and our organizations is they're coming at you. You really don't have a choice. It's whether or not you're going to be able to give it everything you have and get through that, or you see it as something you don't want to be involved with and back away from it.
That's amazing. Values in specifically in law enforcement are very critical, and they really guide our day-to-day interactions and actions. And I'll never forget the Highway Patrol values because they're taught to you at a very young age, and you remember the moniker to get there. But our values here at UDC are service, professionalism, accountability, respect, and knowledge, which spells out SPARK. And the one I really want to focus on, we've already talked a little bit about service, but is professionalism, and specifically how that serves us with the state legislature, with our community, and really how that serves us as a whole, meaning our peers and how they act. And specifically, I think about my time at the Highway Patrol when it was even just the little things like a uniform, for example. I didn't need typically a sergeant to tell me how to dress. My peers would tell me how I needed to dress, or they would hold me accountable to a higher standard. So can you just talk a little bit about the importance of professionalism, what that means to you, and how that serves us in this profession?
Sure. Trying to figure out a good way, an example to be able to kind of put an emphasis on this, but in law enforcement specifically, or law enforcement greater, it could be the Department of Corrections, it could be law enforcement. We are frequently dealing with people when they're at a very, very vulnerable moment. we have the opportunity. We have the authority to be able to deprive them of their personal safety and their personal their personal freedoms. We are there when the worst things in the world have happened to them. I guess I would attribute it to when you have a medical issue and it's very serious and something you're very concerned about and something you feel very vulnerable about, and you go see a doctor. Your expectations are the greatest professionalism possible, that they are going to be competent, that they're going to be professional, that they're going to be able to do the job exactly right and perfectly, and everything about walking into that office, the interactions you have, the conversations you have, are going to either put you at ease and make you feel better about what you're going to, or it's going to make you more nervous. When we use examples with law enforcement officers, whether it be someone who's who's unfortunately been pushed into the correctional system or the law enforcement system and placed under arrest, or someone that's been involved in a crash, or someone who's been involved in a domestic environment, you're dealing with a situation they're going to remember for the rest of their life. It's an incredibly big deal. A traffic stop for someone is an incredibly big deal. You've stopped them, you've interrupted their life, you've put them into a vulnerable position where they're not sure what's going to happen. And the expectation that someone is interacting with them in a professional and appropriate and competent way can't be overstated. And that's when we're meeting the expectations of what our stakeholders are, whether those are the community members we serve, or the leadership of our organization, or the policymakers that oversee our organization, whether it be legislators or city council or county commissioner. They expect the very, very best possibly every single time. And what are we doing in the way we present ourselves, in the way we appear when a trooper walks up to a traffic stop, when you see someone who's sharp dressed and looks good and speaks appropriately and professionally, the person's looking at that saying, okay, this is what I expect, and I know I'm going to be treated fairly, and I'm going to be safe, and whatever the outcome is, I can trust this. When someone comes up there and they look horrible and they're speaking horribly and they're being disrespectful, that person isn't getting that same feeling. And a traffic stop's a very simple example. You talk about someone's been a victim of a domestic assault, or you talk about someone who's been, some other kind of a personal crime, or someone who's, lost something, or something, some kind of tragedy befallen upon them. They are looking for that example that's going to ensure them that they've got confidence, that they've got safety, that they can trust the person that they're interacting with to help them get back to a safe place. And professionalism demonstrates that. It could be appearance. It could be the way we conduct ourselves. It could be, the report someone gets at the end. I'm going to give another example. Let me go off on a tangent really quickly because I've got a really good one on this. About 2 years ago, my wife's sister was horribly murdered in a domestic violence situation. And it was I've been involved in law enforcement on this. Was a really, really violent, horrible attack that ended up in her death. And I'd never, in 30 years of law enforcement, had never had to sit and now look at things strictly from the perspective of a victim of a really, really horrible crime. And I'm watching the frustration and the anger and the unknown and the confusion that my wife and her family and everybody went through, that all the way through, the finding out that it had happened and going up to her sister's house and seeing what had happened there, and then going through the investigation, the court proceedings, and all the way up to sentencing. And we got to sentencing, and we were up there, and so he'd been convicted of aggravated homicide, and we were at sentencing and giving the testimony. But to see the incredible appreciation they had, that one, the investigation had been done competently, had been done professionally, and been done in a way that resulted in a successful prosecution. The appreciation they had for a prosecutor and a victim's advocate that took the time to explain to them what they were doing, to explain to them what their strategy was going to be able to sit in a court proceedings and watch officers testify in a professional, competent, and appropriate way, in a way that instilled trust in the jury, instilled trust in those, to watch the prosecutor present a good case. That was the one thing that they had to bring normalcy back. And I'm not describing that well, but it was interesting to watch how important that was to them, to see that the criminal justice system was working the way it was supposed to be done. Mm-hmm. And, the professionalism, the competency, everything to do. And, that's a really, really significant example. Yeah. But I think, we, to some degree, interact with people every single day.
Yeah.
Whether in a correctional environment, whether in a on the road law enforcement, traffic safety environment, whatever it is, firefighters. People deserve that level of service.
Yeah, agreed. Number one, condolences to
Yeah.
you and your family. I did not know that you had gone through that. So please pass that on to your wife. And thank you for sharing that example, because it is important that we are thorough, complete, and professional in everything that we do. And you never know who's watching. It shouldn't matter. We should act that way at all times, specifically in this profession. Throughout your career, as you're observing professionalism, what role has that played for you in identifying which people should promote up through the ranks of the Utah Highway Patrol as the Department of Public Safety?
Well, obviously, hopefully that is something we're looking at every aspect of it, at every level, and every thought process, in whatever the process is going through that. Obviously, promotions involve, sometimes they involve, competitive testing processes, and we do a lot of deliberate ways in there to really kind of evaluate people's competencies and their preparation and, their knowledge and all of their skills and all of that to make sure that they've got the whole package to come in and be successful as a leader and do well in our leadership. But you're talking about professionalism. You're looking at, okay, how are they going to represent things? How are they going to be as far as, building the organization and making sure that they're, the values you talked about accountability, that going to keep other people accountable to that level as well. Are we looking at people when we're developing new leaders and we're developing first line supervisors? Are we looking at them as, okay, is this someone who actually is bringing the qualities that we can see being the Director of Corrections one day, being the Superintendent of the Utah Highway Patrol someday, being the Commissioner of Public Safety someday, or whatever it is? Are we actually looking at just filling a spot? Are we developing leaders that are going to actually, be able to take the organization to the next level in whatever way that needs to be, and all of the changes that are coming into that? The professionalism, the way you conduct yourself, the way you communicate, the way your appearance is, the way you interact with other people. Hopefully we're always looking at that and setting an example for one, but then holding a high expectation as well when we're looking at the leaders that we have, who we're promoting, who we continue to promote. All of that goes into that as well.
That's great. You are truly the epitome of longevity in law enforcement, because you've served as a leader for a very, very long time. And not just serving as a leader, but you've attacked every day with a great deal of energy and passion and excitement for the job, and it's evident. What would you consider to be the secret sauce, I guess, so to speak, to having a long and successful career in law enforcement and as a leader?
Yeah. Excitement, enthusiasm, love, people. It's incredibly easy to give it everything you've got when you love everything about it. In public service and in our organization, obviously every day there's things we didn't wish we were dealing with, small ones and big ones. But the excitement of going to work every single day, of being involved in something that you really, really love more than anything. I can honestly say after 33 years, there's not been one day that I've got up and just simply did not want to go to work. I wanted to be there every single day. Even when there were things that I wish we weren't dealing with, I still wanted to be there and be a part of it and make sure the organization and love what we're doing. I think longevity is being able to make sure you're looking for ways to challenge yourself. You're looking for ways to challenge your organization. You're always looking for not what are we just trying to grind through every single day to day, but what are we actually trying to accomplish? What are the things we're going to improve our organization? Where are we going to grow? Where are we going to take on new missions? Where are we going to incorporate new technologies and new abilities? Where are we going to, what are the future leaders that we're trying to develop? All of the things that you can put into there. And then also actually taking opportunities to step back, because it's really, really hard to feel like you're accomplishing anything every single day when you're just grinding through whatever the task is of the day, or the challenges, or the meetings, or the email list. But then looking back 6 months and say, okay, on this initiative, in this area, on this particular thing, where are we at compared to where we were 6 months ago or a year ago? And actually being able to say, okay, we've actually moved the needle quite a bit, and we're in a much better place, and we're a long ways down the road from where we were when we started. And taking excitement in that, and then being able to share that and communicate that with this, so everybody you're working with is seeing the same things, and you're talking about those things, and taking taking the small wins or the big wins, or at least, whether it's metrics or actually, taking account for what we're actually accomplishing and communicating that a lot and talking about that a lot, because it is amazing. And, when you if you ever once feel like, okay, I don't want to be a part of this anymore, then you probably need to make a decision to go. I guess one of the things I'm grateful for is ending a career still loving this more than anything. And, I was actually talking to some other people that have moved out of positions and moved on to different careers and left public service and public safety and law enforcement. And one person from another state, he was a retired colonel from another state and a good friend of mine. And I shared that with him. The decision to retire is one of the most heartbreaking things I ever did. And he said, well, yeah, and it should be. If it didn't, you stayed way too long. If you don't love it as much the day you left as the day you started, then something went wrong in there, and hopefully that never happens.
That's amazing. It's also such an important reminder that we have to look backwards and look at our successes. When you're a leader, you're often looking forward. So thank you for that reminder. We're running short on time. I just have a couple more questions for you. What advice would you give to those just starting out? And then also, what advice would you give to someone who's been doing this job for a little bit of time to help them to stay inspired?
Probably the same advice would be for both. One is give it everything you've got. I mean, you've been given an opportunity to be involved in really incredible and important things, and to be a part of an amazing organization full of the greatest people ever. It deserves everything you've got. It should be absolutely exhausting for leaders, especially new leaders moving into new positions. Hopefully, we are long past defeating the fallacy that you're as you move into new leadership positions, your job gets better. As you move into a new leadership position, if it's not the most exhausting thing you've ever did, then you're not doing it correctly. When you take on a new position, a new assignment, or get promoted into a new position, you should work harder than you've ever worked before, or you're not doing it correctly. You should be working harder than everyone around you and setting that standard and looking for opportunities to be able to do that. And if you are, the rewards and the excitement and the successes and the gratitude and the accomplishments, everything we're looking for in that are going to take care of themselves if we're doing that. If you're not going to be able to see those. And always look for opportunities to challenge the norm. I think it's an exciting time for new officers coming into the law enforcement profession, because we are growing exponentially. We're growing in mission. We're growing in size. We're growing in capability. We're in the middle of technology that's going to change the way that the law enforcement profession does the things it do. We're taking on new things, and so the excitement to be able to do that, but be willing to engage the hard things, develop new skill sets, look for new opportunities, look for challenges to these things. Grow personally, develop your professional portfolio, whether that's in the leadership knowledge or within formal education, or within training, within specialties. There's so many opportunities out there. If we're not taking advantage of those, they're going to run us over.
That's great. Okay, going into retirement, what legacy would you like to leave behind, and what's next for you?
Somebody told me one time that being a leader is stewardship, and I hope I can remember the three things in there. But the things the things that you should be focusing on is one, plant the seed for the future. Make sure we're developing leaders and creating an organization that's capable of something more than what we've done before, and that when there's no leadership gap to be able to walk away from, make sure that when you're done, you leave it better than you found it. That you created an organization that's more capable, that's stronger, that's better, that's going to be able to thrive and accomplish things that you were never able to accomplish as a leader as well. And then the final thing was give it everything you've got. Walking out of an organization, looking at the Utah Highway Patrol and the legacy of what's been able to be there, hopefully we always have an organization that people are excited to be a part of, that people love to be there, that people look to and always want to be fascinated by what state troopers do, what law enforcement officers do, and what's out there. I don't know. I think you talk about legacy, and hopefully every single one of us, even though we're going to step out of this and someone's going to step into the role, and the organization, if we've done it correctly, is able to backfill, and whoever steps out, someone steps in, is able to do that role better. But hopefully the organization, the environment, the culture, everything about it is just a little bit better because you were there, and you leave something that defined that a little bit greater and did just as much at laying that foundation for the next generation as the generation that did it before us.
That's awesome. Well, Colonel, even in your last week, you agreed to come in and share your knowledge from your amazing organization to our amazing organization. I have no doubt that our people are going to learn a lot from you, or have learned a lot from you, and it's going to help us to continue to elevate where we're headed. I want to thank you for your years of support and mentorship and friendship, and I wish you all the best in your retirement. But if you get bored, UDC is hiring. So.
There's always a job. Well, and to see individuals like yourself moving, leaving the Utah Highway Patrol, which as well as I did the day you left that and went to be the chief down in Moab, that broke my heart because you were seen as such an incredible leader in our organization, and it was a loss for our organization. We were going to have to figure out how to be able to come back for. You went down to Moab. You did an incredible job down there. It's a great organization. It's doing better than it ever has. And to see you yourself and Director Red and what you've done with corrections, the excitement, the enthusiasm, the change, the environment, it's exciting and fulfilling and makes our organization proud to see able to do that as well. So hopefully we continue to do that.
Awesome. Thank you for being
here.
Thank you, sir. And Team UDC, thank you for tuning in and for all of your continued support and work you do. We really appreciate everything that you do every day to continue to work together, transform lives, and protect our communities. Please be safe out there.
This has been Conversations with Corrections from the Utah Department of Corrections. These podcasts are on our website at corrections.utah.gov or on the UDC YouTube page. Suggestions for a future topic can be sent to corrections@utah.gov. Thank you for joining us.